Saxon Bastille, an island in the sky. Above the left bank of the Elbe, where the sandstone cliffs of Saxon Switzerland pierce the clouds, stands an object that seems to defy gravity itself. Königstein Fortress, or Saxon Bastille. This is not just a castle, it is 9.5 hectares of a stone plateau raised 240 meters above the river level. Imagine the logistics of that time. The walls here are up to 42 meters high and 1,800 meters in perimeter. This is not a structure, it is a monolith in grandeur. Looking at Königstein from below, you understand this hill is not part of the landscape. This is a natural safe where Saxony has hidden its treasures, its enemies, and its kings for centuries. Heart of the system. Every engineering system has its own heart, without which it will die in a matter of days. For Königstein, it is not walls but a well, namely 152.5 meters of pure sandstone drilled by human hands. This is the deepest well in all of Saxony and the second deepest in Europe. In the Middle Ages, a fortress without water was simply a stone coffin where an army waited for its thirst. But here, in the depths of the rock, engineers found the key to autonomy. How many human lives were sacrificed to reach the aquifer? Decades of work under the pressure of the stone, where every meter could collapse and bury the workers. This was not just a mine, it was an engineering manifesto. Locals say that the well is inhabited by the ghost of the craftsman who dug it. They say that he still counts the depth of each bucket of water that is lifted up. A prison for the chosen ones. Königstein had two sides to its nature. The first was defensive, the second was isolation. The walls, built to keep out the enemy, became the perfect insulator for those the state wanted to erase from memory. It was a state prison where time passed differently. Locked on a plateau, surrounded by an abyss on all sides, the prisoner lost his sense of scale. But today, 700,000 tourists climb here every year to take photos. They smile, drink coffee, and look at the Elbe. They do not see the shadows of those who sat in these casemates for centuries, looking at a horizon that was within reach, but which had become unattainable for them. More than 50 buildings, some of which are over 400 years old, are an entire ghost town that has simply changed its function from defense to contemplation. Start of coordinates 1233. The first written trace was recorded in 1233. Burgrave Gebhard Stein, at that time this region was a no-man's land, a broken cable between the Kingdom of Bohemia and the influential bishopric of Meissen. For the Bohemian kings, Königstein was not just a rock, it was a status object. In Lapide Regis, on the rock of the king. This is what this place was called in official charters of 1241. Bohemia was building the castle as the main hub that controlled the Elbe. Trade is money, and the river is the main logistics of the Middle Ages. Whoever controlled Königstein had his finger on the pulse of all the financial flows of the region. It was not just an outpost, it was a customs terminal of the Age of Swords. A time of feuds and blood on the map. After these times, chaos began. Medieval politics is a series of endless reboots where each successive ruler tries to rewrite the history of his predecessor. Emperor Charles IV almost wiped Eylau Castle off the face of the earth, redrawing the map of the region. The castle changed hands like collateral. The Daninsky family, feuding with the Margraves of Meissen, turned this period into a real hell. This was the Dawn feud, a bloody conflict, where the castle became the main prize. Only in 1459, after the signing of the Treaty of Eger, did the borders finally stabilize. Königstein became Saxon. But unlike other rock castles which over time turned into ruins, Königstein remained in the game. The dukes knew that a military facility of this level could not be decommissioned. Religious anomaly. The year 1516 deserves special attention. Duke George the Bearded, a fierce fanatic and enemy of the Reformation, committed a real architectural anomaly. He transformed the harsh military machine into a monastery, the Kloster des Lobes der Wonder Marie. It was a strange pause in the history of the fortress, where instead of the sounds of crossbows, psalms sounded. But the system could not stand it, and in 1524 the Duke died. Saxony became evangelical, and the monastery was closed as quickly as it had been opened. The fortress returned to its original state, to cold, efficient military expediency. The rock again became a refuge for soldiers, not for monks. Vertical life. Königstein was not always autonomous. Yes, until 1563 the garrison depended on rain and cisterns. It was a critical point of failure system. If there is no rain, you are dead. People understood you need direct access to water, and they started to hammer the rock. 152.5 meters of vertical passage through basalt and sandstone. It was not just work, it was a physical challenge to geology itself. 8 cubic meters of stone per day were pulled out into the light until they reached the aquifer. The well is not only an engineering feat, but also a sponge for myths. Locals believed that it was the ear of the fortress. On quiet nights, if you lean your ear to the hole, you can hear not just the echo of water, but a whisper. Legend has it that the well absorbs all the conversations that have taken place in the fortress over the centuries. If a prisoner threw a note with the truth there, the well would return it as sound years later. This is an acoustic echo of history. Version 1589. Christian I of Saxony realized that Königstein was the best hub for storing power. He launched a massive leap in development, and from 1589 to 1681 the fortress was completely rebuilt. The battlements became a monolithic ring. They built everything from the gate Torhouse to the Christiansburg and the large armories. This was a process of strengthening the perimeter. They didn't just build walls, they built a military system that could withstand anything. From 1694 to 1756 came the third stage, namely the expansion of the barracks. The fortress became like a beehive, where every square meter was designed for functionality. Alchemist, wine, and deciliters of luxury. But again the story of the absurd began. Augustus the Strong, a man who wanted everything at once, he ordered the coopers to create the Great Barrel of Königstein. Almost 250,000 liters, the largest barrel in the world. It was an engineering feat that cost as much as a small detachment of soldiers. It was to be filled with wine from the vineyards of Mason. It was a miscalculation in the system. Instead of thinking about defense, the rulers spent resources on alcoholic ambitions. By the way, it was thanks to Böttcher, who worked here, that Königstein became the point where European porcelain was born, and alchemy turned into a business. This is the most absurd and gloomy story. The 250,000-liter barrel was built from the best oak, but the tree went crazy from so much wine. Legend has it that the barrel was charged to drink not only the wine, but also the joy of the garrison. After the barrel was dismantled, the castle supposedly became inhabited by the spirit of the hangover, a feeling of unfounded anxiety that overwhelms visitors in wine cellars. This is a great example of how excess leads to mystical destruction. Germans who were preparing for a war that never happened. 1871, the German Empire includes Königstein in its defense network. The last major stage of construction begins. Battery ramparts, 8 firing points, circular defense. It was an example of excessive engineering design. They created the perfect defense machine, calculated every sector of the shelling, took into account every threat. But the attack never happened. It was a system that spent millions of thalers on waiting, a defense that no one ever used. A majestic, expensive, but useless architectural power. Saxony's reserve. Königstein was the perfect safe. When Wittenberg or Dresden were burning under the fire of crises, the monarchs simply migrated here. The treasures from the Zwinger, priceless works of art, state archives were stored here. Everything that was important to the Saxon identity was evacuated here. The fortress did not just survive, it protected its contents and values. History has proven that they chose the right location. While the world around them was changing, Stirling and Königstein remained stable. Military zero. Königstein is a paradox. It is a fortress that almost never took part in real battles. For the Saxon electors, it was not a bridgehead but a safe place for power. When the fire of war broke out around them, the monarchs simply migrated here. It was a zone of exclusion for the enemy and a zone of maximum comfort for the elite. They could helplessly watch from the height of the walls how their army surrendered at Lilienstein, simply because from Königstein you do not control the battle, you only watch how it ends. When the Dresden Zwinger burned down, treasures and archives were taken here. Königstein was the cold storage of Saxon identity. The chimney sweep's route, a crack in the legend. Königstein had a reputation as an impregnable place. It was a granite myth that had been believed for centuries. Throughout history, no army, no general had been able to overcome these walls by force. But in 1848, the legend cracked because there was someone who was not afraid of death, an ordinary chimney sweep named Sebastian Obratsky. He saw not an insurmountable wall, but only a narrow gap hidden from human eyes. He climbed vertical sandstone cliffs through a narrow chimney, a route that today requires the skill of elite climbers. It was a defeat not of the army, but of the very concept of the fortress. His path, called Obratsky's Chimney, is now a shrine. He reminds us that no stone will protect against a man who is willing to risk everything for one step up. Stone silence and the archive of forgotten lives. Since the 16th century, Königstein has become the darkest prison in Saxony. But it was not just a place of imprisonment. It was a stone sack for those whom the state wanted to erase from memory. Kings, politicians, revolutionaries were hidden here. Kaspar Putzer, Mikhail Bakunin, August Bebel, for them the castle walls became the border of the world, beyond which there was nothing. During the World Wars, the fortress became Aflag for Allied officers. It was a place where time stood still and the only goal was simply to survive until morning. During World War II, Aflag soldiers told stories about the officer without a face. He appeared on the walls during fog. He did not attack, he simply stood and looked at the Elbe. When approached, he did not disappear, he became part of the masonry, as if his uniform and face had turned into sandstone. This is the myth of perfect security, a soldier who became part of a defensive perimeter because his duty was higher than the biological need to live. In 1942, French General Henry Giraud did the impossible. He escaped from here. He escaped from a fortress that no army could conquer. The story of the prisoner with no name is the most terrifying of them all. In the 18th century, a man disappeared into this darkness. His name was not recorded in any archives. They say he spent so many years in total darkness that his eyes lost their need for sunlight forever. When the cells were opened, he refused to come out, saying that the cold stone had become his only home. Legend has it that he did not die, he became part of the fortress. The guards still whisper that they see a silhouette in the casemates that reflects the light of the lantern as if it were made of granite. This is a watchman who never leaves his post. Masks of the Fortress, From Prison to Eternity. After 1945, Königstein experienced the most strange metamorphoses. The Red Army set up a hospital here, later a center for re-education of those who did not fit into the new reality. It was an attempt to erase the past and write a new one, but the stone remembers everything. The fortress changed roles like an actor playing hundreds of plays on one stage: monastery, prison, hospital, tourist attraction. It survived because it learned to be different while remaining itself. Today, looking at these walls, we see not just a museum. We see a witness of the ages, namely the stone which has seen everything but retains its silent grandeur. The names of the rulers have disappeared, the states have disintegrated, and Königstein stands. This is a monument that does not need to be supported by history, it is history itself. The end of an era, silence after the guns. Since May 29, 1955, Königstein has ceased to be a barracks. The guns have fallen silent and the soldiers' boots no longer beat the rhythm on the stone pavement. The fortress, which had been preparing for war for centuries, suddenly turned out to be unnecessary for it. It has become a museum, a place where history is no longer made but only contemplated. The silence that has settled in these casemates is heavier than the roar of the guns. When you walk through these courtyards, you feel more than just a tourist attraction. You feel the echo of how the warrior spirit slowly dies, giving way to the curiosity of the crowd. 25 million people have passed through these gates. They come, they look, they take pictures, and they leave, not even realizing how much pain and hope these walls have absorbed. Elevator to the sky and the scar on the giant's face. In 2006, something foreign was attached to the body of Königstein, a panoramic elevator. It cuts through the vertical wall 42 meters up. On the one hand, it is convenient, and on the other, it is a defiant scar on the face of a large rock. For centuries, people climbed here only through blood, sweat, and exhausting climbs. Now you can be at the top in a few seconds without even feeling the height. Does this bring us closer to history? Or on the contrary, do we lose something important when the path to the top becomes too easy? When you stand in the glass cabin of an elevator, watching the panorama of the Elbe unfold, remember, you are standing where once the sentries peered into the horizon, waiting for death. Ghosts on canvas and the fortress in history. Back in 1756, Elector Augustus III commissioned the Italian Bernardo Bellardo to paint a portrait of the fortress. These are not just paintings, they are an attempt to stop time. Bellardo painted 5 large-scale views of Königstein, trying to capture every detail, from the courtyard to the grandeur of the walls. But history played a cruel joke. The paintings never reached the customer. The 7 Years' War began, and they went into exile, scattering across galleries in Britain and the United States. Today, these paintings are like the abandoned souls of the castle, scattered around the world. Looking at them in Manchester or Washington, you see Königstein as it was before the smoke of war changed its face forever. They are the only witnesses to what was lost in the crucible of history. Love in the shadow of a rock. Even literature could not ignore the greatness of Königstein. In Anthony Trollope's novel Phineas Redux, the fortress becomes a place for human drama. The hero stands on this magnificent rock built for war and hears words that change his life. It is a strange contrast. A fortress built to bear death becomes a place where life and sincere feelings are born. The stones of Königstein are indifferent to who stands on its top. A king planning a campaign, a prisoner awaiting execution, or a lover opening his heart. The castle was here before us. It will be here after us. It is simply a silent witness to the human bustle which disappears faster than sandstone cracks under the winds of time. There is a legend that somewhere deep under Königstein there is an unknown tunnel that leads far beyond the fortress to the foot of the cliffs, which no prisoner has ever found because it was walled up by the shadows themselves. Silence of the Stone. Königstein does not just stand on a rock, it has grown into it. This fortress has seen it all, how kings hid their gold here, how prisoners dreamed of a sip of freedom, and how millions of people today walk the same paths, not realizing the price of each step. We are used to thinking that history is what we read in books. But history is what lies beneath our feet. It is basalt that does not cry, does not complain, and does not need updating. It simply stands, and we come and go, our ambitions burn, our empires crumble to dust, but Königstein remains. It is a silent witness to human bustle, which disappears faster than sandstone cracks under the winds of time. Königstein does not belong to anyone, it belongs to time itself. Thanks for watching, my friend. Don't forget to watch our other videos and learn new mysteries. We have a lot more interesting things in store for you. Leave your questions and wishes in the comments. What should we tell you about next time?